Namo Buddhaya. The Satasahasrika Prajnaparamita Sutram, the large sutra on perfect wisdom, the chapter 35th. The health, absolute purity, the causes of the production of firm belief in the Dharma, tending the Buddhas. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva, the great being who resolutely believes in this deep perfection of wisdom wherefrom he has deceased before he came here. For how long has that son or daughter of good family set out for the supreme enlightenment? How many Tathagatas has he honored? For how long has he coursed in the sixth perfection, he who resolutely believes in this perfection wisdom according to the meaning of the and the MENTS? Lord, this Bodhisattva will be one who is born here after he has deceased in other world system, where he has honored the Tathagatas in the 10 directions, the fulfillment of the six perfections. That Bodhisattva has for incalculable and measurable hundreds of thousands of newtons of kotis of eons perfected himself for the supreme enlightenment, and beginning with the first thought of enlightenment, he has coursed in the six perfections, and then he has come here. And when he sees and hears the perfection of wisdom, he will produce the thought, I have seen the teacher, I have heard the teacher, and he will obtain this perfection of wisdom according to the meaning and the method by way of the signless and non-dual and the baseless. Subhuti. Can one then see or hear the perfection of wisdom? The Lord. No, Subhuti, those who hear and see the perfection of wisdom, they do not actually see or hear the perfection of wisdom on account of that fact that Dharma is their real field. They do not see or hear the emptiness, the applications of mindfulness, etc., the enlightenment of a Buddha on account of that fact that Dharma is their real field, skill and means. Subhuti, for how long has the Bodhisattva coursed who makes endeavors about this deep perfection of wisdom? The Lord. One must make a distinction in this. It is possible that a Bodhisattva, beginning with the first thought of enlightenment, makes endeavors about this deep perfection of wisdom and about the other perfections, and that will, with skill and means, he doesn't reject any Dharma and sees no accumulation or taken away. He never becomes laken in the six perfections, and those Buddhas and Lords whom he desires to honor and worship with various kinds of worship, with regards to them, his various kinds of worship succeed. As soon as he has produced a thought of them, he passes on from Buddha field to Buddha field. He is no more reborn in the belly of a mother. He is never again deprived of the super knowledges, and he doesn't become partial to any defilement or to a disciple thought or particular Buddha thought. The causes of the non-production, the firm belief in the Dharma. Deeds conducive to the ruin of Dharma. On the other hand, there are sons and daughters of good family who use the great vehicle and who have seen countless Buddhas and who train in themselves in their presence, have given gifts, guarded morality, etc., to develop wisdom, but all that by was of basing themselves on something. When the deep perfection of wisdom is being taught to them, they lack in faith and walk out of the assembly. In their lack of respect, these sons and daughters of good family even walk away when the Buddhas and Lords teach this deep perfection of wisdom. Even here, there are assembled sons and daughters of good family belonging to the great vehicle who, when the deep perfection of wisdom is being taught, will walk away. And why? Because in the past also, when the deep perfection of wisdom was being taught, they have walked away. Therefore, also just now they walk away. When the deep perfection of wisdom is being taught, there is no concord either in their bodies or their thoughts, and they will heap up a karma conductive to weakness and wisdom. Having done and heaped up this karma conducted to weakness and wisdom, they will refuse this deep perfection of wisdom when it is being taught, and by this refusal they will refuse the all knowledge of the past, future, and present Buddhas and Lords. By this rejection of all knowledge, and by having done and heaped up karma conducted to the ruin of Dharma, they will be hurled for many thousands of newtons of kotis years into the great hells. While they pass on from one great hell to another, their world system will be destroyed by fire, water, or wind. When such a destruction of their world system takes place, they will be hurled into the great hells in other world systems. They When they have been reborn there, they will pass on from one great hell to another, and after the destruction of the world system, they will again another world system be hurled into the great hells. When also those world systems will be destroyed, they will have decreased in these great hells. Deceased in this great hells be again reborn just here, while their karma conducted to the ruin of Dharma is still inexhausted. Again, they will pass on from one great hell to another. When they are reborn in these great hells, they will experience many sharp pains, and that until the time that this world system is once more destroyed. When that destruction has taken place, they will again have deceased here, be reborn in another world system in the great hells. Thereafter, they will, in all the 10 directions, be reborn as animals. Then they will reborn in the 10 directions in the world of Yama, experience very painful feelings there, and thereby they will exhaust that karma. Having exhausted the karma, which led to so many painful feelings, they will somewhere and at some time acquire a human body. And wherever they may be reborn, they will be born blind, or be born by blind families, or in the families of outcasts, or refused workers, or man keepers of oxen, hogs, or in families which are mean, contemptible, and low class. And when they are thus reborn, they will be blind or ugly, or without hands, feet, ears, or nose. And where they are, they will not hear the words Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, or the words Bodhisattva, Praktika, Buddha, or Arhat. All this from their having done and heaped up this karma, conductive to ruin of Dharma, Shariputra. Are not even the 5 deadly sins similar in their after effects to that doing and heaping up of this karma conducted to the ruin of Dharma? The Lord, one should not say that there is anything similar in magnitude to this karma conducted to the ruin of Dharma, which has been done and heaped up by those who think that they should oppose the perfection of wisdom when it is being taught, and who say that one should not train therein. This is not Dharma, this is not Vinaya, this is not the teacher's religion, this is not been taught by the Tathagatas, the Arhats, the full enlightened Buddhas. They themselves will decide to oppose it, and others beings also they will dissuade from it. Not content with having endured their own continuities, they will try to endure those of the others also. Having poisoned their own continuities, they will poison those of others also. Themselves lost, they will also destroy others. They themselves do not recognize or understand the deep perfection of wisdom, and they decide to oppose it, and others also they will persuade to do the same. To these persons I do not even grant permission to hear the perfection of wisdom, how much less do I grant a vision of it, and still less the ability to stand in it. And why? Persons of this kind should be known as defamers of Dharma. Son of good family of this kind should be known as mere rubbish and vipers. Those who think that they should listen to them and believe them will be ruined through their lack of method. For someone who defames my perfection of wisdom should be known as a person who defames Dharma. Shariputra, the Lord has not told us about the length of time during which such a person who has defamed Dharma will be reborn under the influence of this deed. The Lord, leave that alone, Shariputra, and why? If this were announced, those who hear it would have to beware lest hot blood spurt out of their mouths, lest they should incur death or deadly pain, or be afflicted by the dart of sorrow, lest they shrivel up or wither away, burn, turn blue, black, or a sicklish green, or so great in the length of time during which a person who has defamed Dharma will be reborn under the influence of that deed. So great are its faults. By the Lord, it gave no opportunity to the Venerable Shariputra to learn for exactly how long that person would have to suffer for his deed. Shariputra, proclaim, Lord, as the guidance for future generations, for how long the Dharma defaming persons will continue to suffer from their deeds conductive to the ruin of Dharma. Lord, may this be a guidance to future generations that through having done and heaped up this Dharma conducted to the ruin of Dharma, he will experience many sufferings in the great hells. That is the measure and magnitude of his suffering, that he will experience sufferings for just so long. In this way, virtuous sons of and daughters of good family will turn away from these deeds conducted to the ruin of Dharma. Even to save their lives, they will not reject the Dharma because they fear they might meet with such sufferings. Subhuti, a son or daughter of good family should become well restrained in the deeds of their body, speech, or mind, for they do not want to experience such sufferings and do not wish to be prevented from seeing the Tathagata, from hearing the Dharma, and from seeing the Sangha, do not want to be reborn outside the Buddha field and without encountering a Buddha, do not want to live among poverty-stricken humans, and for when this action expressed by speech which rejects Dharma has been done and heaped out, then an action conducted to the ruin of Dharma has been done and heaped up. The Lord, when this action expressed by speech which rejects all dharmas has been done and heaped up, then an action conducted to the ruin of Dharma has been done and heaped up. Just here, there will be deluded persons who have left the world for the well-taught Dharma Vinaya, and who will decide to defame and oppose this perfection of wisdom. But to defame and oppose the perfection of wisdom means to defame and oppose the enlightenment of the Buddhas and Lords. And to defame and oppose, that means to defame and oppose the all knowledge of the Buddhas of the past, future, and present. And to defame and oppose, that means to oppose the Dharma. To oppose the Dharma means to oppose the Sangha. And when the Sangha is opposed, then the worldly right views and the supramadana are opposed, as well as the six perfections, the 37 dharmas which act as wings to enlightenment and holy truth, etc., to all knowledge is opposed. When all knowledge has been opposed, then an infinite mass of demerit has been acquired. And when such a mass of demerit has been acquired, then also an infinite mass of ill and sadness has been acquired. The four causes of the karma obstacle, Subhuti. Those who oppose this deep perfection of wisdom, O Lord, by what modes do they oppose it? Lord, by four modes do these deluded men oppose this deep perfection of wisdom. Which four? These deluded men are, first, under the influence of Mara. 2. They are unpracticed in deep dharmas and have no serene confidence in them. 3. They have settled down in the 5 skandhas. And 5. They have fallen into the hands of bad spiritual directors, practice in faulty ways, exalt themselves, and depreciate others. Endowed with these four modes, those deluded men will eject the deep perfection of wisdom. Subhuti. It is hard to gain confidence in the deep perfection of wisdom for one who is unpracticed, lacks in wholesome roots, and is in the hands of a bad spiritual advisor, the Lord. So it is, Subhuti. How deep then, O Lord, is the perfection of wisdom, since it is so hard to gain confidence in it, the Lord. Form, etc., is not the bound of freed, because form, etc., is without the own being of form, etc. The past start and point of form, etc., is neither bound nor freed, because it has non-existence of its own being. The future end of form, etc., and neither bound nor freed, because it has no existence for its own being. A present form, etc., is neither bound nor freed, because it has non-existence of its own being. Subhuti. It is hard to gain confidence in the perfection of wisdom if one is unpracticed, has planned for wholesome roots, is in the hands of a bad teacher, has come under the sway of Mara, is lazy or small vigor, robbed of mindfulness, and without self-possession. The Lord. So it is, Subhuti, the general character of absolute purity. The purity of form, etc., is identical with the purity of the fruit. Moreover, the purity of form, etc., to the purity of the knowledge of all modes is the purity of the fruit. The purity of the fruit is the purity of the perfection of wisdom. The purity of the perfection of wisdom is the purity of form, etc., to the knowledge of all modes. It is thus that the purity of form, etc., to the knowledge of all modes, and the purity of the fruit, and the purity of the perfection of wisdom are not two, not divided, are not broken apart, not cut apart. the different forms of absolute purity. The disciples are purified of the obstacle of the defilements. Moreover, Subhuti, what is the purity of self? That is the purity of form. And what is the purity of form? That is the purity of self. This is thus that the purity of self and the purity of form are not two nor divided, are not broken apart, not cut apart. So with the purity of a being, a living soul, a person, etc., to of one who sees, etc., to the purity of one who sees and the purity of the knowledge of all modes. The purity of the knowledge of all modes is the purity of one who sees, for they are not two nor divided, are not broken apart, not cut apart. Moreover, Subhuti, from the perfect purity of self results the perfect purity of form, etc. From the perfect purity of form, etc., results the perfect purity of self, etc. It is that the perfect purity of self, etc., and the perfect purity of form, etc., are not two nor divided, are not broken apart, not cut apart. Moreover, Subhuti, from the perfect purity of greed, hate, and illusion results the perfect purity of form, etc., to the perfect purity of the knowledge of all modes. It is that the perfect purity of greed, hate, and illusion, and the perfect purity of form, etc., of the knowledge of all modes are not two nor divided, are not broken apart, not cut up. Moreover, Subhuti, from the perfect purity of greed, hate, illusion results the perfect purity of form, etc. The practical Buddha says purified as part of the obstacle of the cognizable. Moreover, Subhuti, the purity of form, etc., to consciousness is the purity of the fruit, and so on, until we come to the purity of ignorance. From the purity of karma formations results the purity of consciousness. From the purity of consciousness results the purity of name and form, etc. From the purity of old age, death, sorrow, lamentations, pain, sadness, and despair results the purity of all knowledge. It is thus that the purity of old age, death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, sadness, and despair, and the purity of all knowledge are not two, nor divided, not broken apart, not cut apart. The Bodhisattvas as purified of the covering on the path of the triple vehicle. Moreover, the purity of the perfection of given results from the purity of the perfection of given, and so for the other perfections, for the various kinds of emptiness, etc. From the purity of the special Buddha Dharmas results the purity of all knowledge. It is thus that the purity of all knowledge and the purity of the special Buddha Dharmas is not torn nor divided, nor broken apart, not cut apart. The varieties of absolute purity, the weakest path. Moreover, the purity of the perfection of wisdom is the purity of form. The purity of form is the purity of everything up to the knowledge of all modes. It is thus that the purity of the perfection of wisdom and the purity of form and the purity of the knowledge of all modes are not two nor divided, not broken apart, not cut apart. And so for the other skandhas and for the perfections. The medium weak path. Moreover, from the purity of inward emptiness, etc., to form the purity of the emptiness of the non-existence of non-being results the purity of the knowledge of all modes. It is that the purity of inward emptiness, etc., to the purity of the emptiness of the non-existence of own being and the purity of the knowledge of all modes are not two, not divided, not broken apart, not cut apart. From the purity of the skandhas, elements, sense fields, and conditions for co-production, etc., co-production, etc., to form the purity of the 10 powers, the grounds of the self-confidence, and the special Buddha Dharmas results the purity of the knowledge of all modes. It is thus that the purity of the skandhas, elements, sense fields, and conditioned co-production, and the purity of the perfections, the dharmas which act as wings to enlightenment, the holy truth, the unlimited, the trances, the formless attainments, the 8 emancipation, the 9 successive attainments, the emptinesses, signless and wishless, the super knowledges of all concentrations and all their running doors, and the purity of the 10 powers, the grounds of self-confidence, the analytical knowledges, and the special Buddha Dharmas, and the purity of the knowledge of all modes are not two, nor divided, not broken apart, and not cut apart. Moreover, the purity of the knowledge of all modes and the purity of the perfection of wisdom are not two, nor divided, nor broken apart, nor cut apart. The strongest weak path. Moreover, from the purity of the cognition result the purity of the unconditioned, and from the purity of the unconditioned, the purity of the conditioned. It is thus that the purity of the conditioned and the purity of the unconditioned are not two, nor divided, nor broken apart, nor cut apart. Moreover, Subhuti, from the purity of the past results the purity of the future. From the purity of the future, the purity of the past. From the purity of the past, the future, the purity of the present. From the purity of the present, the purity of the past and future. It is thus that the purity of the past and future and the purity of the present are not torn and divided, are not broken apart, are not cut apart. This is the end of 35th chapter of the large sutra on perfect wisdom, the Satasahasrika Prajnaparamita Sutram.